It's now time for our Entre Nous segment, and today we're focusing on generosity, specifically the art of giving the French way. Solange Mougin joins me in the studio for more of this. Hi, Solange.
Hi, Jenny.
So is there really a specific French way of giving?
Well, the act of giving, of course, is universal, but there are a few traditions that are particularly strong here in France. But before we get into the particulars of French donations, of tax deductions, of les étrennes or New Year's gifts, and overall how generous the French are or are not, let's dive into a burning gift-giving question that can be quite divisive at times in families. When do you give Christmas presents? On the 24th or on the 25th? In France, like in other nations, there is no one clear-cut answer. And to illustrate this, I have figures for you. Statistic Consumer Insights polled over 1,000 people in each of the following nations about this question of 24th or 25th. In France, they found that 38% opened their gifts on the Réveillon, or on Christmas Eve, versus 28% who wait for Santa to come on the 25th. It's important to note as well that some 34% said they have other traditions, like in my household, where after much negotiation, we do both. Adults on the 24th, kids on the 25th. Now, elsewhere, like in the US and Germany, very few people open them on Christmas Eve, whereas in Brazil, most are die-hard 24 Decemberers. Again, here in France, like in the UK, it is a mixed bag, and it is also an expensive bag as well, with the average budget just for presents ranging in France between 200 and 400 euros, depending on the poll.
I am Christmas Day all the way.
Me too.
All right, so the holiday season, not just about giving gifts on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. For many people, it's also about giving to those who are less fortunate.
Yeah, and France is not on the podium of being among the top 3 most generous nations. Those honors actually go to Indonesia, Kenya, and the US. This is according to the World Giving Index, which tracks if people volunteer, donate to charity, and help strangers. France is actually 100th on that list. But the French do give, and they're giving more and more. In December, the Unions of Associations and Foundation, the France Générosité, came out with its latest figures, and it found that in 2022, the French gave over 9 billion euros to charity. Of those donations, 58% came from private citizens, or 5.5 million households. Companies were also big actors here, contributing 42% of that 9 billion figure, or nearly 4 billion. That sum was spread out over 142,000 businesses, them providing sponsorship and aid. Now, both individuals and companies, they do get tax write-offs here in France, with the deadline being the 31st of December, so there are quite a number of last-minute checks at this time of year. For individuals, tax deductions range from 66% to 75%, depending on the type of charity you give to. Now, these laws are often called La Loi Coluche. This is after the beloved French comic who created the food bank Les Restos du Cœur and pushed for such incentives to exist. Now, over the decades, such good deeds, they have actually caught on. In that recent France Générosité report, it found that individual donations have doubled since 2006, going from 320 euros to over 600 in 2022, with wealthy people and the elderly contributing the most. And in regard to those that cannot spare an extra dime, well, there is always the possibility of giving of your time.
Of course. Let's talk about vocabulary now, Solange. There are a lot of different ways in French to talk about giving.
Yeah, there are. There's the word les étrennes, which I'll describe more in a moment. These are Christmas gifts or New Year's gifts. Then there is don or donation, but also legs, which is a bequest. And then there's the less used aumône or alms, and obol, or a meager offering, a pittance. And finally, there's pourboire, which is a tip that you can give, for example, after a meal in a restaurant. Such daily pourboires or tips are place here in France, but they are not, say, a requirement or somewhat of a requirement like they are in the United States.
Okay, so that's for the vocabulary. So in practice during the holidays, do French people give gifts to people who aren't their immediate friends and family?
Well, of course, there are donations, which we've talked about. And then there are these things, these les étrennes. And this is a tradition of giving a little something to service workers. They date back to the Roman Empire when it was a sprig of verbena branches. These gifts were then outlawed during the Revolution, but they kind of stuck on. They were outlawed because they were thought of as corruption. The tradition continues today, nonetheless, especially towards les concierges or building managers, who back in the day often would receive 10% of a tenant's rent in cash.
Some give 150 francs, others 50 francs, others 200.
Some are really nice to us, and from others we get nothing.
Do you give the same services?
Not at all.
But you help everyone.
Everyone, but those that give nothing, get nothing.
Sounds like my concierge.
I don't have one. There are fewer and fewer of these concierge or guardians, so the tradition is dying out a bit. But often a cash omelette can be replaced by a little bottle of wine or a little trinket. They do still exist, though, the cash omelettes. One thing that also continues, but could also potentially die out, is the sale of calendars. In France right now, you may see firefighters on street corners or going door to door selling calendars for the new year. This is a tradition that dates back to just after World War II. It is legal as long as the firefighters they're okay from their hierarchy and are in uniform. The funds go to charities, to paying for the 14th of July balls, to l'Amicale or the firehouse associations. Now, the post office workers do also sell calendars. They have this tradition. But here the money goes directly to the postal worker who has actually bought them out of pocket in advance to boost his or her often meager salaries. The same goes for les éboueurs, or street cleaners and garbage workers. Here, though, many cities actually warn people about swindlers and imposters. In Paris, for example, it is illegal to have éboueurs or street cleaners go door to door. So you have to be a bit wary of that at times. But all the same, one of the amazing things on the whole about generosity of all sorts is the effect that it can have on the giver. Studies show that one of the fastest ways to become happier is through generosity.
Oh, I love that. All right, Solange, thank you so much for that. Solange Mougin there with that look at how people give here in France. Thank you very much.